Welcome, everybody, to U of Man Live. My name is Tim, and tonight we have a very special guest on our panel. His name is Jim Goodall. He is a military retiree, let's say United States Air Force retired, and we want to thank him for his service. Thank you, sir.
I think all the veterans for their service. It's really quite a calling.
Yes. Thank you. And also, he is an author and he is a prolific podcaster. I give him that. Please welcome Jim Goodall to U of M.
Tim,
welcome, Jim. Good to have you.
I'm delighted to be here. I head off to Reno first thing tomorrow morning. I'm going to stop and spend the evening with a random guy, if you've heard his name before, and it should be a lot of fun. And I'll be there for 3 days, and then probably Monday the 13th, I will be at Bob Lazar's for at least 2 days, possibly 3. It's a driving trip. There's no way I could fly into all those locations without bankrupting me. And then I'll go see my worthless brother in Portland area, and then off to Seattle to see friends. And then I have to go down to LA for an interview, which has absolutely nothing to do with airplanes or UFOs or things that go bump in the night. But it's about my involvement in the excavation of a 305-acre pyramid complex in southern Belize.
Super
wow,
exciting.
Very interesting.
Oh my gosh, exciting.
Yeah.
And that, and matter of fact, they're there right now, and I should be there. And the only reason I didn't go is because I had already made the commitment to Dave Scott that I would be in Reno for his SOR gathering. Else I would be there. And I sort of kicked myself in the butt for not being there, because we're there with an award-winning videographer or cinematographer, and Tess is a director producer. She's won all sorts of awards for her documentaries, and then the crew that's down there with Jared Murphy. And I should be there, and I'm just so green with envy that I'm not. It's and because they're getting up at the crack of dawn and they're reviewing everything that they've shot for the day. I haven't gotten very much feedback from them. They did have just when I was first talking to you, Tim, the phone rang, and that was actually it was a conference call with everybody from Belize. But so I'll have to get it later. So
okay.
But it's
we hope that when you go down there, you find out a lot of cool things and bring it back in some kind of documentary so we can check it out.
Oh yeah, and the local archaeologists. I mean, all the sites are manned by students either working on their PhD or their masters in Mayan archaeology, and they all said that the pyramids at a minimum are 2,000 years old, but it's now believed, and it's pretty much agreed upon throughout Mesoamerica that more than likely the pyramids are between 20,000 years old and 200,000 years old, and the Mayans found them abandoned and repurposed them for their own use.
Yeah.
So
kind of like the Egyptians.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible, and a lot of the stuff has been moved. Now our group has also been invited to come down to Peru by the just recent retired director of the Interior for Peru, and they're going to allow us to do some testing, some core samples of the Terpreta soils below some of the big pyramids. No one's done that because they're not, for some reason, they're not affected by earthquakes. So, but that's a different story. That's a different time. Today, tonight is on things that go bump in the night. UFOs.
But that's very, very, very cool. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Could you start a little bit and tell everyone a little bit about your background?
About me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm 79 years old. I was born and raised in Silicon Valley. That was when it was known for fruits and nuts, not the two-legged kind, but the type on trees and bushes and stuff.
Right.
And my passion for airplanes started when I was about 5 years old. We were living in San Jose at the time. I'd already gone to bed. My dad came into the bedroom and he said, "I don't know what's coming, but you got to see it." So we went outside and not that far. We weren't that far from San Jose Municipal Airport. It wasn't an international airport yet. It was just a small little airport. And over the Coast Mountains heading to Travis Air Force Base was not one, not two, but 24 Convair B-36s. And I've been hooked. And so fast forward to I'm about 9 or 10, my best friend's dad was base commander at Moffett Field Naval Air Station. And we were always referred to as Captain Smith's son and that friend of his. And I mean, all the shore patrol, all the Marine Guards knew who we were. So we were pretty much invisible. We rode our bicycles everywhere. We knew where we couldn't go, but we'd go into the hangars. We'd go to the big hangar number 1 and, drive down the middle. There was a trampoline in there. We'd go there and have a fun time and go talk to the sailors working on the airplanes, go out and sit underneath the tower where they had a PA system listening to radio traffic on aircraft that were doing touch and goes. And back in the 50s, there was about 7 or 8 on average, 7 or 8 crash alerts a day. And we saw an A3 Sky Warrior come down, hit hard. He thought it was an aircraft carrier. And both main landing gear wheels went sparks, fire, and the whole bit. So it was an exciting thing. But Danny called me at home one day, it's during the summer, and I said, "You got to come out here to Moffett." I said, "Why's that?" And he said, "There's something I got to show you." So it was about a 2.5 mile ride. I rode my bicycle, and I got to the main gate, and they had to call him because even though everybody knew who I wasn't allowed on the base unless Danny came to get me. So we ride our bikes over to Big Hangar 1. We go down to the far end, closest to the bay, and it was an area that was cordoned off. There weren't any signs, off limits, use of deadly force authorized. It was just black curtains and a keep out sign. And Danny says, "You got to see this." So we rode our bicycles, and again, we were there so often we were invisible. It didn't arouse any suspicion. So Danny pulls back the curtain and we go in, and I'm looking at the prototype XF-104 Starfighter. And it was still classified secret. It had been in the NASA. It was NACA back then, but what is today the NASA Wind Tunnel Complex at the AIM Flight Research Center. And I mean, it was just unbelievable. Here as I'm a 10-year-old kid or 9-year-old kid who absolutely loves airplanes. And what do I see? I see one of Kelly Johnston's wonders, the F-104. So Danny gives me the double dog dare to get in the cockpit. So we open the canopy, we push the loading, the boarding ladder up. I get inside the cockpit. We close the canopy, and he latched it. And I'm in there for about 2 minutes, and all of a sudden I start getting a little bit nervous that I'm sitting on an ejection seat. I don't know what handles do what, but I was a little bit spooked out. So I said, I'm going to get out of here. So I try to unlatch the canopy, and I wasn't strong enough. Danny, both of us were trying to do it. We couldn't do it. So, oh shit! Excuse me. So Danny had to go find some maintenance guys who called Shore Patrol. The Marine Guards were there. Some Lockheed guys were there. We got our ass chewed out. 70 years later, it still hurts. So that was the beginning of my passion for Lockheed Skunk Works airplanes. So on March 27th, 1962, I joined the Air Force. I ended up at Lowry Air Force Base in Denver, Colorado as a communications specialist. And in early February of 64, I got two sets of orders. One telling me that in August, I was going to Alaska on a permanent change of station, a PCS. And that I had a set of orders to go TDY to Edwards Air Force Base to help support 3 programs for Category 1 testing. It was the YC-141 Starlifter. It was the XB-70 Valkyrie from North American Aviation, and a classified program. And that program turned out to be the Blackbird. And on the morning of February 29th, 1964, 2 YF-12 interceptors, those are the fighter version of the Blackbird, flew in from Area 51 and came straight in. And when they pulled around and the rear ends were facing the hangar and the engines were running, they were just idling. And the heat from 4J58 set off the deluge system in the hangar and about drowned some of the Lockheed guys in there. It was just a hoot.
Oh,
But I couldn't get there because the billeting was 8 miles from the flight line and someone had already taken my truck. So it's now March 10th. It's 10 days later. I worked a lot of overtime. I could hear something very, very loud flying, but I was using installing something, so I didn't have a chance to see anything. And we're getting ready I had worked a lot of overtime, and in the military, you don't get paid overtime. Sometimes you get what they call comp time for overtime. So I had like 3.5 days off. So I got off at noon, changed my clothes, went over to the Northrop hangar. They had a shuttle flight that flew every couple hours from Edwards Air Force Base to Hawthorne, which is a suburb of LA. And that's where the headquarters for Northrop was. And as we're waiting to load the airplane, I hear this roar and I see dust and debris being blown across Rogers Dry Lake. So I went running down the taxiway and I looked towards the XB-70 test pad, which is next to the new hangar, a new tower, excuse me. And at first I thought it was the X-15. The airplane was black, fires coming out of the back, but the people were too small. So all of a sudden they yelled, "Hey, we're loading." So I ran back up and jumped in the Piaggio. And as we took off right off of Rogers Dry Lake. And as we're banking over, I'm looking straight down on top of a Blackbird.
Wow.
And I have never been the same. It affected my entire life. And then when I was gone that whole week, when I came back Monday morning, they handed me my work order. It was for the Lockheed hangar. I walked into the hangar and I'm looking at the ass end of 2 Blackbirds. And I'm 18 years old and I'm about ready to have an orgasm. I mean, it was the most beautiful. It's one of the sexiest airplanes ever to fly. And it's the last airplane to been designed exclusively with slide rules. Everything today is all computer-aided design. But back then they didn't have computers. They had Abacus. That was probably the fastest computer they had, or they had most of the engineers, like my dad, had a big Monroe calculator. I mean, it can go like, I think 12 digits on the other side of the decimal point when you're trying to, figure stuff out. And it was just, I mean, the whole event was something else. And I know I did go to Area 51. I wasn't told it was Area 51. They wouldn't acknowledge it. And I didn't even know what Area 51 was in 1964. But I had to install some equipment for ground-based telemetry, but it was at a different location. So we jumped on a Fairchild F-27. It's a twin-engine high-wing commuter type airplane. I mean, it's not a, you're not going to go cross country. It's all, short hops. And we flew for about 90 minutes. We landed out in the desert. There was two buses on either side of the airplane as we got out. And all they said is, you look straight ahead. You don't go turning around looking. You go right into the hangar, and you'll be there all day. We have box lunches there for you. So I was there for about 5 hours. At the time, I didn't know where I was at, but today I know I was at Area 51 for a day. And I've actually been in Area 51 twice, one legally and one illegally. So I was, the fraud I was married to was good seamstress, and I got 2 survival blankets, these aluminized one with the day glow orange on one side. And she sewed a quilting pattern of infrared suppressive desert camouflage, and she made a poncho for me. And it had to be, there was snow on the ground, so it was about 30 degrees out. I'm at the north fence line of Area 51, and I walk in about 3 or 4 miles. And I think I lost 10 pounds just sweating because I was so damn nervous. And what I would do if I'd hear a helicopter or something, all I have to do is crouch down, pull the poncho around me, and I had no infrared signature. So even if they're using infrared scan, they wouldn't see me. But I got about, let's say, 3.5, 4 miles in, and I was sopping wet. And I said, I can't deal with this. So I turned around and headed back. I've been to the fence line at Tonopah Test Range and Area 51 on 80 plus different occasions. And as much as it pains me, I have never seen anything I couldn't explain. And I know what to look for, but I've never seen a UFO. And I've been out the black mailbox there in Tippecanoe Valley, and
Nice.
people say that, hey, they can read your mind. So I'm in there and I say, okay, abduct me, but let me bring my Nikons with me so I can get at least some photographic coverage. But I'm yours. Take me.
Right.
And it never happened. So,
Hey, we got a question. We got a question for you, Jim.
Sure.
Polly Rotterman says, "What was that thing that made you say this place is weird at Area 51?"
I mean, it was just a feeling. It was. I had never experienced getting out of an airplane and told don't look around. So I knew I was in some place that that really doesn't exist. It is. We know it. We know it today as Area 51, but it is a. It was just a weird sensation, and it's. I mean, the Blackbird and spooky airplanes and UFOs have really altered the course of my life. I hated term papers in school. I hated writing, doing anything, and I got 29 books published.
Yeah.
Go figure, right?
Hey, now you have something to say.
Yeah, and because of my passion for what I do, I ended up meeting some of the most incredible people on the planet. One of them, everybody knows his name, and he's been a dear friend of mine for over 35 years, and that's Bob Lazar. And the day I met Bob was the first week of January of '89. The Air Force had announced the existence of the F-117 and the B-2. I think the F-117 was on the 11th of November, and the B-2 was on the 22nd. So this is the first full week of '89. I called John Lear up. I said, "Hey, John," I said, "let's go find an F-117 for me to photograph." He said, "Sure." So I said, "I'm flying in tomorrow. Let's let's get in your, I'll pick you up at the house and we'll head to Tonopah. So I did. And we're going up US 95 heading to Tonopah. And we're about 2/3 of the way there. It's 200 miles. It's halfway between, Tonopah's halfway between Las Vegas and Reno. So we're about 2/3 of the way, just past Scotty's Junction, and an F-117 flies right across the road. It's at about 1,500 feet. I about crashed the car.
Yeah.
So we arrived in Tonopah. We grabbed a quick bite, and then we headed east on US 6. You go down 14 miles, and that big blue sign with a nuclear weapon on top that says Tonopah Test Range. That one right there. You drive down that road for 18 miles, and you come to the main gate of Tonopah Test Range. And the I have at the time I had it wasn't my retired ID. I had my military ID, which means I could get on a base unless it's a restricted base, and Tonopah Test Range is. So John and I just drove down the fence line, which is public lands, and you can see the whole base. And this is before digital cameras. And I look to the north and I see a fuzzy black ball with a little white dot underneath, which was a landing light, and then a smaller one, sort of blue and yellowish, with a landing light. So I figured that's an F-117. It's on its way. It's on its long final, and to land at Tonopah Test Range. So this is before digital cameras. So I'm shooting with a Nikon, but I'm shooting Kodacolor 100s, fine grain print film.
Yeah, good film.
And as it's getting close to me, I have a 70 to 200 meter zoom on it. As I'm shooting it, all of a sudden my body, as it's filling up my viewfinder, my body is starting to vibrate. I was like a 10-year-old boy seeing a naked woman for the very first time. I mean, I couldn't stop shaking. And as it came through, I went through all 37 shots, and I rewound it, put it in my pocket, said, let's get the hell out of here before they come and get us. So we headed back out. We hit US 6. We head east another 50 miles, and that's Warm Springs. That's the north terminus of the extraterrestrial highway, as they call it, which is Nevada Highway 375. We head down. We spend a quick meal there at the Little Alien. Joe and Pat Travis, I've known them. I first met them in '87, about a year after they'd bought it was the Rachel Bar and Grill, and they changed it to the Little Alien. And I told John, we got to get back. I said, I have some print film. I won't know for a couple of days if anything turned out. It may be all blurry. And he said, there's a thing back then called photomats.
I remember the photomat.
And you almost have to have gray or white hair to remember what they were. They were little kiosks. They were little kiosks, and not everybody. Just and you would go in there. You'd drop your film off. They'd give you an envelope. You'd fill it out, take off the claim check, give it to them, and you come back the next day. You never even had to get out of your car. So I knew we weren't going to get back to Vegas in time to go to one. So that means I have to wait another day. That was driving me nuts. So as we're heading down to Vegas, John tells me, he said, I got a new friend, just moved here from Albuquerque. He's going to come over shortly after we arrive. I said, fine. So we get there, John's place, about 9:15 in the evening. And about 10 minutes later, there's a knock on the door. John goes and answers the door, and this young man, very soft-spoken, very easygoing guy, introduces himself as Bob Lazar. So I tell him what my dilemma is. I have this print film of an F-117. I got 36 to 37 exposures. I don't know if any of them are good, and I have to wait probably 2 days before I'll have a chance to know if anything turned out okay. And Bob says, I got a C-41 processor unit at home. Now, John Lear, crash. I'm Sicilian. I talk with my hands, so excuse me. Yeah, Bob said, I have a C-41 processing unit at home, and that I can process the film. So he lived on the west side of town off of West Charleston. John lives near Nellis. So we had about a 10-minute drive, 15-minute drive. We get in this car. We're not more than a block from John's place. And Bob looks at me and he says, I feel sorry for that dumb son of a bitch Lear. I said, what do you mean? I said, he's from this world famous aviation family. I mean, his dad brought Learjet to the world and says, and that son of a bitch believes in UFOs. How stupid is that? He says, I'm a nuclear physicist. If I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist. So we go there, get the processing done. The film turned out great. And fast forward to last May, and I said, Bob, do you remember what you told me the day we met? He said, you mean that I didn't believe in UFOs? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, I remember saying that. I didn't. So, and he has a photographic memory. That's why I knew he would probably remember. So that was, that was one thing. Now let's move forward to Desert Shield and Desert Storm.
But didn't Bob change his mind?
Oh, absolutely. About a month later, I think it was. He was waiting for his clearance, his Q clearance to be upgraded.
Didn't he interview for a job while you knew him out in the desert?
I believe so. I didn't spend that much time in Las Vegas back then, but I know he was recommended by Edward Teller for the job. And when Edward Teller's manager, or whatever you want to call it, was asked if he would confirm that, and there was more or less, well, I can't speak for him, but that sounds about right, was the answer. So fast forward, it's now Desert Shield time, Desert Storm, 1990. And I had a down day. I forget what happened, but there was nothing going on in Southeast Asia. There was nothing going on in the Pentagon. So I had a couple hours to kill. And I had Bob's W-2 in my back pocket. Now I'm a tech sergeant, E6. I have all my ribbons, that thing right there. And I go looking for the United States Department of Naval Intelligence, and it's nothing written like that appears on the computer, the Pentagon computer that I had access to there at the Pentagon. So I decided I was going to go find someone who can give me an answer. So I decided I was going to go to, I think it was Naval Intelligence. So I looked up where they are in the Pentagon. I wasn't that far from them. I go in there and I have my light blue shirt, short sleeved, fresh haircut, shine shoes. I mean, I was looking pretty good. And I go in there and doors open. There's a young Lieutenant JG behind the desk. And I said, he said, sir, I have a question. Can you tell me where this is located? He looks at it for about 2 seconds. He said, excuse me, Sergeant. He gets up. He goes into the 2-star's office. He's in there 10, 15 seconds. He comes out and he said, the Admiral will see you now. Now, those of you who have been in the military and know anything about the Navy, especially, probably the Marine Corps is not as bad, but the Navy is really no Navy 2-star admiral is going to speak to an enlisted puke from the Air Force, period. And I go in there and I give him a real sharp salute. He doesn't say at ease. He said parade dress. So I'm standing there and he has Bob's W-2 in his hand, and he's shaking. He says, "Sergeant, I don't know where you got this, but if I ever see your face cross the threshold of my office ever again, you'll be the most sorriest son of a bitch in NCO in the United States military. Do you understand me, Sergeant?" I said, "Yes, sir." With that, he took it and put it in a shredder and says, "You're dismissed." I turned around and said, "Oh shit, boy, that really got a reaction out of that guy."
Yeah.
So, is Bob real? Yeah, his story's never changed. And I asked him, I said, are you gonna be one of the whistleblowers? He said, "I was a whistleblower 35 years ago, and all they did was piss on me and try to ruin my reputation." So they can all go to hell. I don't care.
Right.
They
he even
had
appeared in that phone book, right?
Yeah, he was in the phone book, and with the correct number phone number that he said was his. And then George Knapp looked up the other two guys that worked in that lab with him, and sure as shooting, they had the same phone number, the same room number. And the other thing, when he had his Lamborghini jet car, not only was he written up with there was a AMC Gremlin, I think it was, that had the jet in it that would do 200 miles an hour. That one there. No, it's a Honda, excuse me. But there was another one. It was in the Sandia newspaper. So one of our professors relaxes by doing 300 miles an hour and a quarter mile on weekends. And there was a picture of Bob standing in front of his Lamborghini. So is Bob real? Absolutely, positively, without a doubt. And again, his story has never changed. So, and I just thoroughly enjoy hanging out with him. I mean, his wife is one of the sweetest ladies on the planet. She looks like she's about 35 and she's 71. And hi, Steve. It's just fun being there. He has 10 acres. I was trying to get there 2 years ago, and I was at Beale Air Force Base giving a talk on the Blackbird. Nobody on Beale has ever seen a Blackbird fly because they haven't flown since 1990. So I was going to head up there, and I said, "What's the weather like?" He said, "There's a chance of snow." And I said, "Well, I can't make it then." I said, my car does not drive on snow. It doesn't even like a damp morning, just, truth be told. So I didn't go up. I was up there last year and just thoroughly enjoyed my visit. And that's what I'll be on Monday. Yeah.
Steve says, "Oh my God, I used to own an early 80s Gremlin."
Hey, lady, where's the rest of your car? Yeah, that was the joke back then. So my friendship with Bob, I'm honored and blessed to call him a friend, and the same with John Lear. And John was a prankster. You didn't know if he was pulling your leg or telling you the truth. And I know I'd used his pickup truck, and I was on the 10-mile road going to the bombing range right outside of Rachel. As you come off of over the summit, coming into Rachel, there's a road. It's a 4-lane road going 10 miles to the bombing range. So I was parked there one night, sleeping in the front, on the front seat, and a Pavehawk helicopter came down almost on top of me, blowing stuff, and it ripped off a couple of the antennas that John had on his pickup because he had all sorts of communications equipment. And I had heard earlier in like December of 93, I think it was, I actually heard what I believe is Aurora starting up. It's the loudest noise I've ever heard. I've heard of Saturn V go off. And when I got back to Las Vegas, Lear went out to see his truck, and he came across as being just beyond pissed. I mean, he was foaming at the mouth, and I'm really taken back. And all of a sudden, I see this twinkle in his eye, and I looked at him and said, "You son of a bitch, you got me again." And he had the best belly laugh. He had just started laughing. So, and another adventure I had with John to show you how well known we are. This is 1996. Tonopah Test Range has been shut down. It's in caretaker status, which was bull. It's 11 o'clock at night. John Lear and I are at the fence line of Tonopah Test Range. You can see the whole base. There's all sorts of activity. All the lights are on, people coming and going. And all of a sudden, I noticed, and we had night vision goggles and our lawn chairs. You don't want to sit on the ground at night in the desert. You have creepy crawlers can come up your legs like scorpions. And we see the armored personnel carriers come up. The lights are off, one from the west, one from the east, and one from the south. And I stand up and yell real loud, "Hey, we're good guys for taxpayers." All of a sudden, you have floodlights on us. I have 3 little red dots on my chest. John has 3 little red dots in his chest. There's a vehicle coming down the public land side of the fence, north side of the fence. And this guy comes around Lear's pickup. He has his hand on his Beretta. He's in desert utilities. He said, "You're in a restricted area, and I'm ordering you to leave." And I said, "Sir, I don't know who you are, but this is public lands. I don't need your permission to be here." He said, "I said you're in a restricted area, and I'm ordering you to leave." So I pulled out of my back pocket aeronautical map that gives the longitude and latitude to the second. I showed it to him. I said, "This gives you the location of the restricted area to the second. And if you look at the base of that fence post that my buddy has his feet up on, you'll find a USGS medallion that gives the longitude and latitude to the second. I'm in public lands, and I can be here for 15 consecutive days without your permission or anybody's permission." And he started to get really, really pissed. "I want to see some ID." I said, "Well, who are you?" "I'm Captain so-and-so with Advanced Security Inc." He just said ASI. I said, "You're a rent-a-cop. You don't have jurisdiction on this side of the fence." And you can just see his jaws tighten up and the veins in his popping out.
Yeah.
He says, I don't have to show you squat. He said, "I've been deputized by the state of Nevada to uphold the laws of the state of Nevada, the federal government, Lincoln, Nye, and Esmeralda County." I said, "Well, good for you." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you show me yours, I'll show you mine." So he hands me his ASI badge. I hand it back to him. I said, "Sir, that's not a valid form of ID. I need something issued by the state or federal government." And he's getting more pissed.
Oh, yeah.
So he hands me his Nevada driver's license. I don't have these on. So, okay. So I was from Minnesota, gave him my Minnesota license. Lear has his Nevada license up. Hands it to him. He hands it to a guy on the south side of the fence who takes it to the supervisor. Walks in. It's about 11:30 at night now. Supervisor turns the light on, and I hear this. It's just a quote. You can beep it if you want. "Oh shit, it's Goodall and Lear. The lights went off, the red dots went away, and they dispersed." But I knew they weren't going to show anything that night. So
Right. Because you were looking for it.
yeah, they knew we were there.
We have a question that Odessa put up. What was the general perception within the aerospace circles regarding UFOs during your time at Skunk Works? Were there any notable discussions or incidents internally?
I asked my boss, Major General Wayne Gatlin. I said, "General Gatlin, do you believe in UFOs?" He said, "Absolutely, positively, they exist." I said, "You want to expand upon that?" He said, "Sure." Mid-1950s, we're on alert at Duluth Air Force Base. They're flying F-94Cs. They're Shooting Star, subsonic. You could go supersonic if you went into a dive in full afterburner, but you probably wouldn't. You'd probably tear the airplane apart. And they got called up. There was a fast-moving unidentified over Lake Superior. Now, one thing you don't do, especially in the 50s, I think it's even valid today, you don't fly across Lake Superior because it creates its own weather.
Yeah.
You have a body of water that's up to almost 1,100 feet deep, and it's was it 20% of the fresh water in the world is in that lake or the Great Lakes, and it's just so they went at 3 F-94s went up to intercept this thing. They go out over the lake. They see it. They're tracking it on their radar, and as soon as they turn on his weapons mode, the radar dies.
Right.
They reset the circuit breakers, did it again, and every time they would lock on, they would die. And it's heading right towards Finley Air Force Station. They had a geodesic dome. This is when we had air defense in North America, which we don't today. And General Gatlin, he was a major at the time, he's talking to to Finley, because Finley is the one people who were tracking it. Say, yeah, it's coming right forward. And it's going fast. It didn't go by us. It's disappeared. And General Gatlin is an afterburner, which you can only do for about 90 seconds in one of those 50 vintage airplanes. And he said, well, the reason it's not on radar, it's hovering right above your radar dome. So as the guys started running out, this thing went straight up, and it was visibility unlimited. And it just went, and it was a ball of some sort. So that's one Air Force officer. Another one was Lieutenant Colonel Dave Fruhoff. Dave was an SR-71 pilot. He's flying a night mission out of Kadena, Okinawa. Said it was the Vietnam War was almost over, so it was late 72, early 73. He's at 78,000 feet. So it's 11 o'clock at night, 10 or 11, I think it was about 11 o'clock at night. And he's heading straight. There's a 3/4 moon off to the left. And he's at 0.7. That's a good speed to go to and from target. You want to be at Mach 3 over target, but 2.7 is a sweet spot where it doesn't thermally stress any of the systems on the Blackbird. So he's flying. He noticed a glint of something metallic or something reflective about 5,000 or 6,000 feet above him and 5 or 6 miles away. And he was going to open up his visor to see if because you can see a bazillion stars up there at that altitude. But he didn't want to open up his visor because Murphy's Law says as soon as you do that, you're going to lose pressurization, and boom, he's dead. It's because at 70 to 80,000 feet, you have less than 0.4% of the atmosphere up there. So he doesn't take his name off of the object. He gets on secure voice and he calls Kadena, Okinawa. That's where he was flying out of. It was Det 1 of the 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing. So he called Kadena and said, do we have another bird up? And they said, well, you were at the briefing today. No, you're the only one up there. I said, well, no, I have company. I'm going to go take a closer look. So he advances the throttle because he's an absolute minimum burner right now. And he does about a 10-degree bank as he's climbing and coming towards this object. He figured when he was still about a mile away and still 1,000 or so feet below it, this thing took off at about a 30-degree angle of attack. And Dave said he lost it going between 180,000 and 200,000 feet.
Wow. So
fast forward to 1979. Dave retires from the Air Force because he had a Q clearance, because he worked on spooky stuff. I mean, he flew spooky stuff. He applied for a job as a facility manager at Area 51 and was hired. And he knew most everybody there anyway. And he was there for 5 years. And you just don't go asking questions when there's black programs involved. And he'd been there, he was there over a year. And he's at the club in the evening, and he said, yeah, I got a question. Did we ever flight test anything that would go Mach 10, Mach 12? And everybody there said, one guy was there, and it was, he called him Pappy. He was head of security. He'd been there since the late 50s. He said, No. So what Dave chased was a UFO. And it's and every time they try to blow holes into Bob Lazar's story, they come out empty-handed because he is who he says he is. And then we have my friendship with Ben Rich. I mean, Ben and I talked once a quarter for over 20 years. And this is August of '89. Ben calls me at home. He said, Jim, I got it from and they paused for a second because I know he was going to say the horse's ass, but he said the horse's mouth, that the Blackbirds aren't going to make it through Congress. He said, if anybody could scrounge one, it's you. So after I finished talking to him, it was early in the day. I got in my car, I went over to the guard base, got on DSN, which is the Defense Telephone Network. This is before cell phones. Not many people had cell phones in 1990 or '89. I call the Adjutant General of the state of New York. And his secretary answered the phone and says, General Weaver's office. I said, yes, ma'am. This is Sergeant Goodall with the 133rd. That would be the 133rd Airlift Wing. I was the wing historian. He said, is General Weaver available? Just a minute, Sarge, I'll put you through. So General Weaver gets on. He's a Major General. And I said, General Weaver. And I said, sir, this is Sergeant Goodall with the 133rd. He said, what can I do for you, Sarge? I said, how would the New York Air Guard like to move the world's fastest airplane in a couple of your C-5s? Dead silence for a few seconds. He said, you mean the Blackbird? I said, yes, sir. He said, when you're ready, you call Will Hall. We'll list it as training for moving outsized cargo. So I got that covered. Next day, I'm over the base. I tracked down my boss, Major General Al Schwab. I said, General Schwab, I want to get a Blackbird for the Minnesota Air Guard Museum. He starts laughing at me. I said, General, do me a favor. Rather than laugh at me, give me the opportunity to fail. He said, all right, smarty, how are you going to get it here? And I said, got that covered. He said, what do you mean? I said, talk to General Weaver. I said, I have two C-5s available when the time comes. And so then I put together a letter justifying getting the Blackbird. And I got the entire Minnesota congressional delegation, 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans, that have never agreed on anything unanimously before or since. I got them all to sign off on it. And in the justification I use, there's me and my A-12. The Minnesota congressional delegation gave us the thumbs up because of the involvement of Honeywell developed all the avionics for the airplane. You know, all the air data systems were done by Rosemont, their Minnesota company. 3M supplied all the special adhesives and coatings, and Sheldall supplied a lot of the heat sensitive or heat wiring that could withstand extremely high temperatures. And 5 of the original 11 guys who flew the A-12 learned how to fly or got their flying experience in the Air Guard. Bob Gillinan with the Tennessee Air Guard, Jim Eastham and Lou Schock with the Georgia Air Guard. So it was a lot of Air Guard connection, and we got it. And then we got the okay that we were going to get the airplane. I was nothing short of beside myself. So Desert Storm got in the way, so we were delayed a year in getting it. And when the time finally came, we arrived at Palmdale, where we're going to dismantle the airplane. Just 1 second. And where was that? Where we
Dismantled
dismantled
the airplane.
where we dismantled the airplane, and it took us 2.5 days to take the airplane apart. And then we had a contact in New York. They told us that on the 27th of October, we had to come back, and I commandeered 2 C-5s. Now, when Pratt & Whitney was hoping to get a Blackbird, they asked Air Force, can we lease a C-5 from you? And they said, yes, not a problem. I said, well, how much? He said, $967,000 a day plus gas. I scrounged 2 C-5s for 8 days each.
Wow.
And so
That's a hell of a scrounge. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Wow.
and $100 million spy plane to boot. So I have to be the best scrounger in the
No
United States
kidding.
military, even better than Sergeant Bilko. So on the 27th of October, we loaded the C-5 into a New York Air Guard, loaded the C-5. We loaded our A-12 into the C-5. On the floorboards, we had 1.5 inches of clearance.
Wow.
But I had measured 5 different C-5s, and they were all they were all within a 1/4 inch of each other as far as how much clearance. If we had to, we could put a come along in between and torque the landing gear in if we needed some more clearance. So we loaded it up. We flew. We didn't have any gas at Palmdale. We flew the airplane. We flew the C-5 to Travis. Spent the night. Next morning, we loaded, filled the C-5 up with fuel, and we're heading out. We've been out about 35, 40 minutes, and we're at cruising altitude. And the loadmaster, who was the chief master sergeant, E9, he's heading down to check the load. I said, can I go with you? He said, well, normally the answer would be no, but since this is your baby, sure. So I went down with him, climbed up in the landing gear, walked along the chines. I had a wheel chock open, keeping that canopy open because the counterbalance was empty. I lifted that up, latched it open. There was a 5-gallon bucket inside that I had in there earlier. The seat's all the way down, and I had a cushion on top of it. So I go in there and I close the canopy. I'm in there for about 45 minutes, going zoom, zoom. I mean, I'm just, and I hear a rap on the bottom of the fuselage, and I open the canopy. Said, "Yeah, we got to go back upstairs." I said, "Okay." So I got out and went back upstairs, and now we're starting our descent into Minneapolis. And the chief comes back and he said, the boss said you can be in the cockpit when we land. Well, the C-5 has 2 separate areas. Crew area, there's a passenger area behind the wing box for 75 troops, and then the forward section. I said, well, I'm already up here. He said, no, downstairs. So I went downstairs, got back into the cockpit, and I was in the cockpit when it landed. So the next day I call up Ben Rich. And I said, Ben, I think I've done something that no one will be able to top. And it's probably the most special thing ever, as far as I'm concerned, for the Blackbird community. I'm the only human being on the planet that's been in the cockpit of a Blackbird at 33,000 feet at Mach 0.72 inside another airplane. And I landed it as well. And Ben started laughing. He says, yeah, I was laughing so hard. He said, I almost wet my pants. So that is.
Congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say, Ben and I talked once a quarter. And this was, I think he passed away in 96. So this had to be 95. And I call him, he's at USC Medical Center. He is dying of esophageal cancer. He was breathing the solvents used for stealth coatings. And a buddy of mine who was one of the original guys on the F-117 program, he said everybody he knows, they've taken polyps out of their lower intestines, and almost everybody has had 1 or 2 bouts with cancer because of the chemicals are so harsh. And I just lost track where the hell I was going.
The solvents were too harsh.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, okay. I have about 1,000 things going through my head. It's like a
Gotcha.
squirrel cage that's on acid. I mean, it's going
Right.
everywhere. So
I don't have ducks and Joe. I have squirrels and they're all on acid. That's the thing.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so I call up Ben. He's at USC Medical Center, and we talk for about 45 minutes about old friends and whatever. And these are the last words he told me. He said, "Jim, we have things out in the desert that's 50 years beyond what you can comprehend." And he knows I can comprehend a hell of a lot. And if you see movies like Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. And this goes in hand what he said at UCLA a couple of years earlier. He said, we have things that would make George Lucas envious. I said, Ben, you want to expand upon that? He said, no. And then the nerve of the god, some bitch dies on me about 10 days later.
Right.
So I was
How rude.
never
How rude.
able to corner him on that. So
When did he say we have the technology to take ET home?
he was a commencement speaker. He was the featured guest at the graduate school of aeronautics at UCLA. And it was in his prepared text when he said, today we have the ability to take ET home. This is 1993. So that's a long time. That's 30 years ago. So, I mean, just think of that statement for a second. 30 years ago,
right.
He said, we have the ability to take ET home, but our government will not allow that information to be made public.
But he's also not specifying where ET lives.
No, he didn't say anything.
That would mean interstellar travel.
Absolutely. And Bob Lazar said, I got to find a piece of paper here. I'll use this. If this is the universe and you're over here and you want to go over here, you focus where you want to go. And as soon as you release the field, you're there. There's no time interval involved. If it's 12:01 and 30 seconds, you do that, and you're there. It's still 12:01 and 30 seconds. Now, I don't know what the time differential would be when you come back, if that affects you or not. I don't know, but you can go instantly, almost through a wormhole or Stargate, if you want to call it that, from here to wherever you want to go. Mm-hmm. Your navigation has to be real precise, because you don't want to fly through a black hole or fly through a planet or a star. And one of the things, I was a docent at Kitt Peak National Observatories for a couple of years, and that's right outside of Tucson. They have 22 optical telescopes and 2 radio telescopes, a 12-meter and a 25-meter radio telescope. And the optical telescopes here at Kitt Peak go from a 12-inch primary mirror to a 13-foot primary mirror. That would be the Mayall, which at when it was built in 1972 was the second largest optical telescope in the world. The biggest at the time being Mount Palomar. But the 2.1 meter telescope at Kitt Peak was used by Caltech, looking at a very, very small section of our Milky Way, not outside the Milky Way, but within our Milky Way, looking at a very, very small area. And over the course of 5 years, using adaptive optics, which they said was equivalent to being up in space. It said it has the same image quality as the Hubble. The Hubble can stay in motion without worrying about rotation of the Earth, as we're ground-based, we're concerned about rotation. But Caltech, over the course of 5 years, cataloged 8,000 exoplanets. And just before I left, I had knee problems. So I'm going up and down, and my knees were killing me, and I'm at 7,000 feet. And so I quit doing that. But just before I quit volunteering up there, we had it was a Poppin' Pizza. It wasn't beer and pizza because it's on the university property, University of Arizona. There was a doctor, PhD type from the National Science Foundation that had just returned from a worldwide conference on exoplanets. And every country and every telescope in the world that has been looking for exoplanets was represented there. And over the course of, I think it was a week-long conference, they, using proven mathematical formulas, they calculate for every star in the universe, based on what everybody was saying, for every star in the universe, there's 1.5 planets. And out of that incredible number, they said that they calculate that there were 2 billion, that's with a B, 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a similar size brown dwarf star as our sun in the inhabitable zone with liquid water. And to quote Jodie Foster's character in the movie Contact, if we're the only ones, what a waste of space. So, thanks, Steve. Yeah.
I got to give a shout out to Steve Wolf for a $10 super chat. Thanks, Tim and Jim. Awesome panel.
I'm having a great time. I enjoy this. And anybody in your viewing audience, and you, Tim, or Drew, anybody, I don't have any preconditions when someone's having you be on my show. My answer is always yes. And I don't care if you only have one subscriber or one viewer, or it's just you and me. It doesn't make that any difference to me. I'm not here for fame or fortune. I've been married too many times to have any fortune, and it's more infamous than famous. So
we're not here for fortune either. What we're here to do is just to present people's testimonies, stories, and to share the information with as many people as we can. That's the whole point. It's about the message, not the messenger.
Yeah. And the other person that he's like my kid. Most everybody's like my kids. I'm older than everybody, but that's Michael Schratt. I've known Michael for about 25 years. And I was talking to him yesterday. He's in Boston, and he had a guy whose grandfather worked at the Skunk Works, and he wanted to pick my brain. So we sat down with that. But he's still working for Dr. Greer, but he's moving back to California because he absolutely hates the East Coast. He grew up in Chicago, so he didn't want to see snow. He doesn't want to see anything below freezing. He wants to be able, if necessary, see the ocean, not Lake Michigan or whatever, but see the Pacific Ocean. He doesn't like humidity. Of course,
right.
Central Virginia is hot and humid during the summer. So he's there for a couple of years. It was challenging for Michael. Michael has a hard time. He's easily intimidated. He's not a very big guy, but he is the most. He doesn't know how to tell a lie. He wouldn't deceive someone if they paid him. Anything that comes out of Michael Schratt's mouth is on his investigations. The thing about it, he's like Sergeant Friday at Dragnet. These are the facts and only the facts. He doesn't interject his opinion. He tells you exactly what happened.
But although he does say that he believes all of his UFOs that he has covered are man-made.
Well, there's two categories. You have UAPs and UFOs.
Right.
If it's designated UAP, it's ours.
Right.
If it's designated as a UFOs, it's theirs.
Right. Okay.
Whoever
We do have a question for you that I need to ask because he's asked several times.
Sure.
Tim Fricky just gave us a $10 super chat. He says, looking ahead, how do you foresee the field of aerospace engineering evolving in its capacity to understand and potentially interact with the phenomena that are currently classified as UFOs?
I think it'll be an incredible awakening by those of those that are privileged enough to be there at the beginning. Now, I've talked to a lot of UFO people who witness them firsthand. And when John Lear was still alive, when he was flying for American Transair, he used to fly all over the country. He'd track down people who said they had been abducted. And he'd go in there and he would, on his own nickel, and he write, I'll answer that in a second. He would contact university or medical association, and he would get someone who has a PhD in deep hypnosis, but he has to be a certified person. And over the course of a number of years, he tracked down 15 individuals that said they had been abducted. Well, 13 of them had the exact same description of what happened, how it happened, and none of them had anything higher than ambient temperature IQs. I mean, there weren't any Einsteins in that group. And
Right.
two of them, the bowl coming out of their mouth was so bad that John knew instantly that they were full of it. They were trying
Right.
to pull one over on him. But okay, did Kelly Johnson really write a letter to CIA to find out what type of skin the UFOs use? I have no knowledge of that.
Well, I think what he means is the skins on the aircraft that you
Yeah.
were around, like the Blackbird and the F-117,
That
were metamaterials from UFOs actually used to create those skins.
Now I've been, because I helped take apart two SR-71s and an A-12. And the back half of one of those SR-71s was a YF-12. So I've had a chance to really see the entire guts of the family of Blackbirds.
Yeah.
And the skin on an SR-71 and an A-12 is 30 thousandths. That's all it is. And and there's nothing in there that you couldn't find at a aeronautical supply store of some sort. I mean, not all of it's geared towards operating temperatures of 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit,
Right.
but they were all conventional aircraft.
Conventional materials then.
Correct.
Okay, cool. So
And
we said
you have to
that's
remember,
great.
you have to remember the Blackbird they started designing it starting in 1957. They were going through some of their irradiations of design, and then in 1958 they were getting ready to bid on which became the A-12 program, the Oxcart program, and it's the last operational military aircraft to be designed exclusively using slide rules. We didn't have computers back then. And the
Right.
F-117, they started working on that design in 72, 73 timeframe. And we didn't have computers back. We had some supercomputers, but they were
Size of rooms.
yeah, they were few and far between. And what allowed us the U.S. to design the F-117, we have to thank the former Soviet Union, because two Russian scientists had put together a paper that they translated, and it gave the calculations necessary to predict the radar return from blended surfaces on a military aircraft or an aircraft that's moving. And I asked Ben, I said, I've seen Tacit Blue, which looks like a flying bathtub. And it was a Northrop program. And they said, and they have blended edges. And how come the F-117 has faceted airplane when you're about the same time frame? He said 5 months after we froze the design of the F-117, we had the computing capability of having a blended surface low observable airplane. But today, in 2024, the F-117 still has the lowest and the smallest radar cross-section of any of the stealth aircraft that we know of that are flying today.
Even
Because
less than the F-35?
It's smaller than any of them. The B-2, the B-21, the F-35, the F-22.
Wow.
It's because about 98% of the invisibility to radar, that is the F-117, is the fact that 98 to 99% of the radiated energy will hit one of those surfaces and reflect away from the receiving antenna.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
And then you coat it with radar absorption material, of which I have. I'll show you just a second.
Show and tell, everybody. Here we go.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm sorry I haven't gotten to the panel, but this is
that's
interesting.
okay.
This is a piece of RAM from an F-117. I mean, it even looks like one, but it's a self-adhesive backing to it. That's why early in the program you could see some white panels on the F-117. That's
Right.
because the stuff wasn't adhered good enough and it came off in flight.
Right? That's funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Woo Rider DG was asking, does Jimmy Goodall believe the SR-91 exists in his own opinion, the Aurora?
Well, in 1980, I think it was February of 83, I was invited by the director of engineering at Honeywell Avionics Division in Northeast Minneapolis, called Ridgeway. And the Ridgeway division was, they supplied all the avionics for the Blackbirds, for all the spooky airplanes. And the director of engineering invited me because the keynote speaker was going to be Kelly Johnson. So Kelly's up there, there's 800 guys there and me, I'm way in the back. And he's talking about, says, all of you know about the big Blackbirds, the A-12, the YF-12, and the SR-71. I said, but I'm not allowed to talk about the little unmanned bird. There's some toy company out of San Diego. He was referring to Testers and John Andrews, and some son of a bitch up here in the Midwest that can talk about it. He was referring to me, but I can't talk about it. He said, but we have this. No, this is 40 years ago. He said, we have the ability today in a manned air breathing airplane to fly to Mach 4, Mach 6, Mach 8, Mach 12, Mach 16. Speed costs money. How fast do you want to go?
Yeah, no kidding.
Right.
So do we have anything that's flying at 12,000 miles an hour? Yeah. I have to believe that technology didn't stop 40 years ago. I have to believe in my heart. Now, my dear friend who had 40 years of the Skunk Works retired about 7 years ago. I asked him, I said, is there any, and he was up at the very top. Yeah, Timothy, man, I'll see you this weekend. Oh shit, I can't, excuse me. I lose my train of thought when I have 1,000 things going through it. Where was I?
He was at the top.
Yeah, I
Top
just,
guy.
pardon?
I lost my train of thought too. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I lost track of where I was at, but my friend from the Skunk Works. I asked him, I said, is there anything that you're aware of? I know you can't tell me of what you're working on or what you know, but is there anything that you're aware of that would get me excited? And Steve said, I know exactly what gets you excited because it's the same thing that gets me excited. And I am not, it says, I'm aware of everything that ADP is working on right now. And we don't have anything like that because, and this had to be in 2014, I think it was. So we're working 10 years ago, said, we don't have a strategic enemy right now. we're dealing with terrorists. So it's a tactical issue, not a strategic issue. So
Right.
no, we don't have that ability. But they from signing a contract to first flight on the Blackbird was 32 months. The Air Force can't change the paint scheme on a C-130 today in 32 months.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's a record. The F-35 in 1989, I met with a gentleman at the Skunk Works. He was the general manager there, and he knew of me, and he showed me. He said, "I got to show you something. It's not classified. So let's go in the main hangar there at Palmdale. Go in there, and there is the X-35 Ironbird. It's all made, all the panels, everything, all the structures made of steel. And what they're doing is they're making sure certain parts and stuff like fit. So that was 1989. Today it's 2024, and the F-35 still isn't fully mission capable.
Yeah, that's just strange. It's all the red tape.
Yeah.
Where's all the money going, though? You think about the trillions of dollars that go missing. It's got to be going into black projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when the A-12s first flew, that program cost about $2 billion in 1960 money. But they couldn't duplicate that today at 10 times that amount, even adjusted for inflation. And people say, well, the B-2 bomber costs $2.5 billion a piece. I said, yeah, because the infrastructure was put in to support the construction of 133. And those rat bastards in Congress kept cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back. They went from 133 to 75 to 48 to 20. So instead of amortizing the total cost to build the B-2, the design, flight test, everything else, instead of being able to amortize it over 133 different airframes, you're doing it at 20 different airplanes. There's a big difference. That's how come it costs so much money.
Right.
If they end up building up 100 of the B-21s, the flyaway cost, and this is life cycle cost, not the window sticker and the day you buy it, but what it's going to cost you to own that airplane from production to boneyard is $500 million, and they're within.
Wow.
From what I understand, they're within budget. So,
wow.
But if and in my heart, in my gut, I think we're going to have disclosure this year. Nothing would tickle me more than to see something like that happen. But
Yeah.
it could be this year.
Okay. Hey, Jim, can you tell us where people can find you online?
Okay. First of all, I don't have a website. I'm on Facebook. I'm Jim Goodall 71. And if you want any of my books, the best place to go is to Amazon. And I can't buy the books any cheaper than they buy them, because they buy them by the train load. So if you want any of my books, of the ones that were shown earlier,
I can show them again.
yeah,
Hold on a second here.
you'll punch it up. Those, the three on the 6 on top are all hardbound. The rest of them are all softbound. But go into Amazon and punch in books by James C. Goodall, and these will come up. And if you do Jim Goodall, some of these other ones will come up. My F-117, the one, not this one, but the one on the down here in the lower right-hand side, I sold almost 70,000 copies of that one. And that's the one I got a lot of static when I I got a lot of static when I was during Desert Shield and Desert Storm because they had put a red flag on my security clearance, and I actually I went and confronted him, and his name was Pete Ames. He was the deputy director for program security for special projects, and I went in there, and I'm in uniform, and Pete, kind of short. He's a retired tech sergeant. He's 6. And so I called him up. I said, Pete, where are you located in the Pentagon? He said 5D 156. So he's in the D ring, room 156. They've changed all the numbers again now, but yeah, that's it. And he said, I said, well, can I see you this afternoon? He said, yeah, get here about 1 o'clock. I'll be back from lunch. So I got there about 15 minutes early, and I pressed the buzzer on the cipher lock, and the door opened up, and there's a young lady behind the counter. I said, yeah, I'm Jim Goodall. I'm here to see Pete Ames. Her mouth dropped open. And then about 10 or 15 guys come walking through. Hey, you want to see what Goodall's in? You want to see what he looks like in person? They'd walk by and stare at me and whatever. And then Pete calls me into his office, and he says, I got your manuscript, which I sent him. I said, you had things in this that were classified above top secret. I said, well, I gave you the opportunity to comment, and you blowhards are just too self-important. You decided not to. So I had no access to classified information to my knowledge. So you can kiss my butt. I don't care. And he said, you're asking too many, you're asking questions we don't like. And I said, as an American citizen, as a patriot, and a member of the armed services, it is my job to question my government. If I have a question, I demand an honest answer. I don't expect a line of crap coming out of you, especially if it's not classified. If it's classified, I can understand. But most things are classified not to keep the enemy from knowing, because they already know. Because they have, even Ben told me, he said, I know we have a handful of, at the time, Soviet spies at the Skunk Works. So how do you know? I said, well, the way the Soviets are in for the long haul, and even today they're in for the long haul, said they'll find some woman who's a divorcee. They're eating hand to mouth. The kid is smart, but he doesn't have any direction. He's getting in trouble. So Uncle Igor will come in, befriend the mother, find her a job. Oh, we got her in personnel at the Skunk Works. How nice. I mean, she's a good administrator. And he puts this kid under his wing for 15 to 20 years. Finally gets him through college, gets him educated to be an aeronautical engineer. And then he has his helpers within the Skunk Works. He gets hired on as a member of the Skunk Works engineering, talent. It goes on for 10 years. Everything's fine and dandy. Uncle Igor is there for all the holidays. He gives mom and the kid, birthday presents and Christmas presents and stuff. So now, let's say it's 88, 87. And Uncle Igor is talking to Junior, and he said, what are you working there at Skunk Works? He said, Uncle, I can't tell you. He said, hey, I've known you your entire life. When have I ever done anything that you didn't approve of? I said, well, never. I said, well, just a little bit. Just give me a flavor. So the kid innocently tells Uncle Igor that he's working on Have Blue, or he's working on Senior Trend, or he's working on some other code-named program. And Uncle Igor is sort of, well, I don't understand. What does it do, or what doesn't it do? And the kid's telling him. So now this guy has, a real nugget, and he's taped it unknown to the kid. And then a month later, Uncle Igor's over the house, and he said, you gave me some information last month that if the authorities got hold of it, you'd end up in Fort Leavenworth as a traitor. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you told me all this stuff about these programs, which are still highly classified. I tell you what, says, I won't turn them over to the FBI, but you have to do something for me. You have to bring home some documentation on these programs that shows the RCS and a bunch of other stuff. Yeah, and that's how they do it. And Ben said that every vehicle that pulls into the parking lot, this is when they were in Burbank, there's someone in an office building across the street is writing down the license plate number or taking a picture of the license of every single car that goes into the parking lot, and they find out who you are. So they're in there for the long haul, and it's and they're good at it. That's the only way I can put it. They're really good at it. So
Right, and it's not just the Russians either. It's China.
Oh yeah.
It's North Korea. It's all our adversaries. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, what we're going to do, Jim, is we're going to go down the panel of the existing members because Odessa had to go lay down. She was tired from working all day and then coming on the chat. And we really appreciate the fact that she was here. Nos, please inform her of that, okay?
Oh, yeah. I was, yeah. And anytime you want me back, let me know.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. You can come back anytime. We'll keep in touch, Jim, on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, and I know you joined the group, UFO Man Nation. So what I'm going to do is extend you an invite for an admin position on there, just as an honorary title, because I know you're super, super busy. But if you get a chance to come on there and post material, whatever you want, please do so.
I would be honored. I'd be honored. It's been a fun evening. I've enjoyed all of you. It was nice. It was nice meeting you, Drew, and Odessa, and Nos, and you, Tim, face to face. And tomorrow I head to Spaced Out Radio. So.
And what's really weird is now you've met UFO Man.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, it's now the whole team. It used to be me, but now it's everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, Nos, you got a last comment?
Yeah. So, I think that the audience could use some inspiration. And the thing is that you, throughout the course of your life, have put yourself in circumstances to have amazing experiences.
Yeah, I've been blessed. I've been blessed with that.
Yeah, and I think people could just benefit from your perspective on what allows you that. I mean, is it just big brass ones, or is it being stubborn, or how do you get yourself in the circumstances for experience?
Because I have always played outside the box or played outside the lines. Mm-hmm. That is, I mean, even since a little kid. You're going to go behind a thing that says keep out, move the curtains back, get inside the cockpit of a secret airplane when you're 9 years old. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. Well, so I want to thank you. I want to thank you for having me on. And it's a shame that Nicole wouldn't be here. I guess she had one of her boy or something like that is not feeling well or something.
Right. We'll have her on for a part 2 really soon. Okay. So that way, when you get back from your trip and you're rested, we'll contact you and see if we can set up a part 2 with Nicole. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Now, good. Drew, I know you got something to say.
Oh yeah. I've heard in other interviews where you talk about a UFO craft from like a ET craft that we have in our possession that was from an archaeological find.
That's the one that Bob Lazar worked on. Sports
Can
model.
you expand a little more on that?
That's all I know. When I go up to sit down with Bob for 2 or 3 days next week, I'm going to ask him about that specifically, if he can tell me where, because he should know where it was,
where it came from. Was it? Do you have any idea? Was it?
It was an ancient
side of the world.
It was an ancient site. That's all I know. And what I'm hoping is when we're doing our excavation in Belize at this 305-acre pyramid complex, we may find something.
You think
Yeah.
there's a craft there?
Because all of the pyramids that I've seen in Belize are all single pyramids. This one, there's 5 of them. So it's a very
Wow.
important place. And the only reason we have access to it is that location did not have a road going into the village. They were totally isolated from the outside world. You had to go through the jungle for about 3 or 4 miles. And when Belize went in and they did a radar scan of the country, and they had to identify all the archaeological Mayan sites, they took this particular site, which was the largest complex in Belize, if not all of Mesoamerica. It was because they were totally isolated. There's no roads near them. They made a special consideration that the village would be responsible for any excavation or any work that was done on that particular site. And that was, and they built the road in 2012. So that area is still pretty much virgin territory as far as what we may find. And the other thing at Nimlimpuit, which is about 18 miles as the crow flies from where the pyramids are that we're starting to excavate, is where in 1923 they found one of the crystal skulls.
Oh, that's important.
And it was laying on the ground. It was laying on the ground like it fell out of someone's backpack or something.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and as you were cleaning the overburden, they found it. So
That's amazing.
So we know that Pyramid G has never been touched. We've been to the top of it, and there's no indication of any activity. The other ones, there was an archaeological team in. They had a trek through the jungle. They were only there about 3 or 4 weeks in the late 80s, early 90s, and they were able to take some artifacts out, but over half of it has not been touched by anybody. So Tom Elmore's there with his LiDAR. They're scanning Pyramid B. I think it'll be doing Pyramid G later on this week. We're there with a cinematographer who's won all sorts of awards from he hasn't won an Oscar yet, but pretty close. And and everybody is, the word's out that there's a group of guys that have secured permission to do the excavation on an unexcavated pyramid complex, and it's us.
Wow.
Cool.
And we're gonna do something along the lines. We're gonna do a pilot, and we're gonna do we hope to do something like Curse of Oak Island. Now it's been going on for 12 or 13 seasons. They've been digging a hole on an island. They found some pieces of wood and a gold coin and one other thing, and that's it. And they've been going on, and they spend $1 million per episode.
Yeah, that's crazy, but you'll have more than that.
So we're dealing with, at minimum, a 2,000-year-old pyramid complex, of which most of it has not been plundered or excavated. And we're gonna do it. We're gonna clear it completely of all the overburden and everything else down to the foundation. All the other pyramids, with a few exceptions, are only the very tops of the pyramid. They didn't go down down to on the sides. So it's going to be an exciting year. I'm supposed to be there right now, but because I gave my word to Dave Scott that I would be in Reno. I can't be down there, but I'm so jealous I can just spit. So
I gotta tell you 2 things. One, we want you to be safe in Belize.
Yeah.
Two, the other thing I want to say is when you meet up with Bob Lazar after the Dave Scott get together, please say hi to him from us.
I will. Well, I mean, just everybody say, "Oh, you got to say hi to." I have a whole list of people, so
Yeah, well, we would really like to say hi to Bob
yeah,
and
yeah.
tell him that he does have a lot of people that do believe his story. So he shouldn't feel.
He has been proven to be telling the truth.
Yes.
Yeah, just by
Yes.
the actions of other people. So I got to
Yes.
go. I have. The wife said, "Well, how long are you going to be on?" I said, hour and a half. So it's been a little bit over an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so we're gonna say goodnight to everybody. Thanks to everybody who watched online. Thanks to everybody who participated in the chat room. We really appreciate you. Thanks for the super chats from Steve Wolf and Tim Fricky. Also, next week we're going to be interviewing Mark Fiorentino about alien life and the connection with the unified field theory. So please come next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Jim, we hope to have you on soon again. Thank you very much for coming.
my pleasure.
Good night, everybody.
You take care.
Farewell.